Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher. Welcome to the Sweetwater Minute. This week on the Sweetwater Minute, we are joined by Shawn Dealey. Shawn, thanks for coming in.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Appreciate you being here. Front of house engineer, mix engineer, recording engineer, producer.
Yeah.
You're a multi-talented kind of guy.
Yeah, it's sort of anything to do with audio I'm sort of got my hands into, but
Right.
yeah, no, it keeps me busy. It's what I love doing, so.
Right,
yeah.
right. And your credits include being on the road with Avril Lavigne,
Yeah.
Billy Talent, Goo Goo Dolls, and you've been working with Counting Crows, right? Both on the road and in the studio.
Yeah, I've been with them for about 6 or 7 years now. It's sort of my day job in the audio world. It's great to work with those guys. We just finished wrapping up recording a new record. I mix front of house for them, do live records. It's been a really great relationship and been really fun working with a talented bunch of guys. So
Yeah, it sounds great. It sounds great. So how did you get started? How did you learn your craft?
Started as a drummer, growing up, teenager, you know, playing in bands and stuff like that. Sort of had an in on the industry. My dad owns a company that builds road cases.
Okay.
So that was sort of, I was a little bit forced into the entertainment world. And sort of followed that. My first job was working at a backline company when I was 16. So sort of took the drumming to, you know, setting up drums and guitar amps and stuff for people. And sort of finished up high school and got a gig on the road. And sort of started as a drum tech, guitar tech, and that sort of, you know, that just wrapped up my 10th year on the road. So
Wow.
been doing that pretty much straight for the past, 10 years. And with the Counting Crows, it's kind of been really great. Started working with them as a drum tech, and then they approached me to come to the studio and record an album with them. Obviously, I've been interested in recording for over 10 years. Started in the basement, my parents' place, with a recording rig on a computer and stuff like that, and kind of escalated. All my work on the road sort of funded my gear buying addiction. So
Right.
the gear piled up, and was doing a lot of stuff at home. And so the Counting Crows knew that. They invited me to come into the studio, and I engineered the Underwater Sunshine record. That came out a couple years ago. That was a covers record, and it was a blast. And then they asked me if I'd be interested in mixing their band live. So kind of came together in a way that's been really great. And that was kind of my goal being on the road, was, you know, being a front of house engineer was kind of what I was looking to do, sort of a creative outlet on the road.
Right, right. So kind of a combination, it sounds like, of being prepared and being at the right place.
Yeah, it kind of fell together in a really great way. So it's been awesome. So
right. So tell us, for those who don't know, what is a day like for a drum tech or a guitar tech? What are you doing during those hours?
Yeah, it's pretty. I mean, it's a lot of sit around and waiting, and you kind of show up at the gig and you get ready. I mean, if you're on a larger tour, there's a lot of other stuff that goes on before your job becomes a priority. So lots of lights and sound get loaded in, but just sort of, you know, general maintenance of, you know, the band's equipment, the drum kit, taking it apart, you know, new heads, stuff like that, getting it set up, tuned properly, ready for the audio guys to come in and put mics up and stuff like that. So I mean, the day gets spread out quite a bit, but, you know, lots of little things all day long, sort of, you know, keep you on your toes. But like I had mentioned, the difference, I mean, switching over to being a front of house engineer, it's a nice way to sort of, like I had mentioned, having a creative outlet on the road. After a while, I find, you know, setting up people's stuff over and over and over again is not as rewarding as it once was.
Sure.
So being able to kind of express, you know, how I'm feeling in audio is a really nice way to sort of end a day at work. So
yeah, right. So to for someone who's interested in a job like that, is it important to be a guitar player, to be a guitar tech? Is it important to be a drummer, to be a drum tech? How does the musician side of it play into that?
I mean, there's a lot of people that don't play the instrument that they take care of. But I find that, you know, if you have a good understanding of how to make that instrument sound as good as possible and play as good as possible, that's sort of, you know, that's kind of the biggest, you know, part of your job is, you know, putting something together for someone to walk up and just sit down and play drums and be like, you know, without having to adjust anything or tune things, or a guitar player that can just pick up his favorite guitar and it's always in tune and always playing properly and stuff like that. So that's kind of the biggest part of that job is, you know, being on your toes to make sure that everything's ready and in tip-top shape for the artist to come in on.
Right. And so you made the transition to front of house. How you started working at home with your recording gear. How did you learn to run sound from the front of house?
Well, yeah, I was. I mean, the home studio turned into a proper studio. I live in Winnipeg in the middle of Canada, and started a studio there, and so I was doing a lot of engineering. And then when I was on the road, I would be trying to pick up mixing gigs with all the opening acts. So I'd be mixing the opening bands.
Okay.
They were on tour with us, and sort of, getting a handle on the live sound thing, which is definitely a different beast than studio. The variables are endless and, can come at you in any different way. But that's sort of, I approached it in a way that I knew that I could get experience because I was already out there. So it was just sort of, taking any opportunity I could get to do what I ultimately wanted to do. So
right. So how much do you find it crosses over from what you do in the studio and the techniques and the knowledge you need there versus what you need at front of house?
I think that I kind of take the approach of, it's still technically the same job. The variables sort of differ in large ways. Like the live stuff, you're in a different venue every day, different speakers, could be different console, different gear, rental stuff. In the studio, usually you're working out of a room that you're familiar with, or at least you have, some familiar, you can bring your speakers with you, you can bring some stuff that kind of makes you feel at home. But
right.
The live situation, I try to approach it in a way where I try and work with the artist, the band, to get the sounds they want before I start going, putting mics up on stuff and trying to make something out of nothing. So I really kind of try and work hands-on with the guys to get what they want to sound like before I start trying to make it sound like something. Because, that's kind of a big part of the battle is, fighting the people you're trying to make sound good. So
yeah, right. So do you find that you want to take studio gear with you to front of house to do
always.
The processing?
Yeah, no, I usually drag around a big rack full of nice compressors and take out nice mics and stuff. And you can call it studio gear, but it is audio gear, and it's just, I like the way that certain pieces of gear sound, the way they do things to audio, and I like to have them in my toolbox wherever I go. So it's I don't really make a definite decision that's like, this is studio gear, this is live gear. It's I like that as a drum compressor. That's a great vocal compressor. I love those mics, so I'll bring them with me. So that's kind of how I approach that. So works out quite well.
Yeah, right. So is it part of your job to specify, I want the speakers here, I want the subs here, this is where the crossover needs to be set? Are you that down into the technical trenches, or are you more walk up to the console and start mixing?
Yeah, no, usually, it depends on the scale of the tour that I would be on. Some of the larger tours, we take our own PA with us. So I spec that, I spec what I want, and then I come in every day and sort of, make some decisions on where it's going to go and how it's going to be implemented. And then EQing, time aligning, stuff like that, I'm always hands-on with that. If we're doing a tour where it's a house system where you walk in and you have what they have, then, I spend the time to try and make it sound as good as possible for what I need it to do and, try and get it happening. Sometimes house systems are amazing, sometimes they're terrible. So it really depends on where you end up and what you can make of what you have. So
right. What tends to be the biggest challenge that you face?
There's a number of challenges in the live world. Stage volume is tough sometimes. Sometimes front of house position can be at the the pinnacle of all the guitar amps on stage hitting you in the face. So that's that's a tough one. Bad sounding rooms, under balconies, things like that. It's mostly mixed position related. You get stuck where you get stuck if you're in a theater or whatever. There's only so many chairs removed, so that's where you're going. But
right.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of obstacles, but it's usually a fun thing to overcome if you have the right tools and people with you. So
right. So you look at it as a challenge rather than a fight or an obstacle.
Yeah. Well, usually.
Right. Right. So you mentioned stage volume can be an issue. Have you found that in general, over the time that you've been doing this, stage volumes have gone down? Have they come up? Are you doing in-ears? Has that made a difference?
There's a mix. Like, I've worked with artists that have absolutely no sound coming off the front of the stage. It's all, we'll put front fills up and there'll be artificial, reinforcement of guitar amps and stuff like that. With the Counting Crows, they all have 2 guitar amps on stage, like, face level on the stage. So it's, there's a substantial amount of noise that comes out, but bands are becoming more conscious of it, and people are sort of developing products that really help, ISO boxes and things like that, or amps behind the stage that the guys are hearing in their in-ears and are being happy with that. But it's there's a lot of different ways to look at approaching stage volume, but as long as your band's kind of playing together and you don't have to do too much damage control, it usually sounds pretty good as long as it's there's 5 guys or 7 guys playing the same song.
Right.
So
right. It has to make a difference, though, if the band does control their stage volume.
Yeah.
It has to make your life easier.
Yeah, I mean, if it's ridiculously loud and you're in a small club, it's like there's not a whole lot you can do. I mean, kick drum and vocal in the PA and hope that it turns out okay. But
right.
It's yeah. I mean, people that understand, you know, what the front house engineer is there for, usually are willing to work with them to get the best out of it. I mean, that's the thing. If I'm working with a band that's playing way too loud, I'll say, hey, do you think you guys could turn down a little bit quieter than the PA so we can get it, you know, we can get something together. And usually, if you approach it in a, you know, tasteful way, they're usually willing to work with you because, I mean, sort of on the same team.
Oh, yeah, they want to sound good too. Yeah, sure. So do you find that when you now go into the studio with Counting Crows, because of that relationship, because you've worked with them so long in front of house, it makes a difference in how you're able to interact with them in that environment? Yeah,
I mean, we have a really great working relationship. They ask me opinions on stuff. We get sounds together, and it's sort of a trust thing with guys. Like, you know, if they understand that you're looking out for their best interest, they'll usually be more trustworthy to you, letting them touch their guitar amp or, you know, tweak something and get things in the realm that they're looking for. But yeah, it's nice. I usually try and create a relationship with anyone I work with in the studio that, you know, I'm there to kind of get the best out of whatever we're doing. So, you know, I want to be hands-on with your stuff. I want to help you, you know, bring stuff to the table that sounds great, and it's, you know, part of the way the band should be sounding or the way they want to sound. So
Right. That's great. Shawn, thanks so much for coming in today. You're here in Studio C, actually, which is where we're at here at Sweetwater. You're working on a project, and we're glad to have you here with us working here, and best of luck in what's happening in the future.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Good to see you.
Take care.
I'm Mitch Gallagher. Thanks for joining me for the Sweetwater Minute.